The last elementary school in rural Shiman Prefecture, Japan, graduated 6 children this year. The building was designed for 500. Next year, it becomes a nursing home. This is not an isolated tragedy. It's a preview of humanity's future arriving decades sooner than anyone in power will admit. The number that should terrify you, 2055. Not 2083, as the United Nations insists while whistling past the graveyard. According to University of Pennsylvania economist Jesus Fernandez Villaverde and a growing chorus of demographic researchers, humanity will reach peak population in just 30 years. The difference between these projections isn't academic. It's the difference between having time to prepare and being caught in an avalanche already in motion. We are witnessing the first voluntary demographic collapse in human history. Not through plague, not through war, but through millions of individual economic calculations that add up to civilizational extinction. The fertility rate in South Korea has plummeted to 0.7 children per woman, lower than Europe during the Black Death. Singapore offers parents $30,000 bonuses, subsidized childcare, tax breaks. The fertility rate keeps falling. The human species is choosing not to reproduce, and the UN keeps predicting the choice will reverse next year. The scale of institutional deception defies comprehension. When Fernandez Villaverde examined Colombia's demographic data, he uncovered a 30% gap between UN projections and actual government birth records. Not a statistical error, a systematic overcount of nearly 1/3. Turkey shows similar distortions. Egypt follows the pattern. The UN classifies these nations as having almost complete vital registration systems, then adds millions of phantom babies to their complete records. It's institutional fraud disguised as methodology. But Colombia's phantom babies pale compared to China's demographic fiction. Yifu Shen of the University of Wisconsin-Madison has documented the mechanism. Local officials receive funding based on reported births. More babies mean more money from Beijing. The incentive structure guarantees fabrication. The evidence is mathematical proof of deception. In 2000, local governments reported 17.7 million births. The national census found 13.8 million infants under age 1. The gap, 3.9 million imaginary babies, represents a 12% inflation of reality. When China announced its two-child policy in 2016, provinces claimed birth increases of 56%. Vaccine records showed no surge. School enrollments remained flat. Maternity wards prepared for crowds that never came. The baby boom existed only in spreadsheets. The world's most authoritative population projections partially rest on data everyone knows is fabricated. Every climate model, every economic forecast, every strategic plan based on these projections is building on quicksand. Even correcting for fabricated data wouldn't fix the deeper delusion, the UN's unshakable faith in demographic recovery. Their projections show South Korea's fertility rebounding next year. China will reverse course next year. They apply a 3-phase fertility model developed when demographic changes moved slowly, ignoring that today's collapse breaks every historical pattern. The 3-phase model assumed high fertility in poor nations, declining fertility during development, then modest recovery as societies adapt. Germany and Scandinavia showed small rebounds, seeming to validate the theory. But that was before fertility fell below levels demographers thought possible. No society in peacetime has ever sustained fertility below 1.0 and recovered. South Korea is at 0.7 and falling. Alternative projections reveal the approaching catastrophe. The Economist's analysis tells us, if current trends continue, just 25 more years peak humanity arrives by 2055. The economic mathematics are merciless. Currently, 4 workers support each retiree in most developed nations. By 2050, that ratio becomes 1-to-1 in Japan, Italy, and South Korea. The required tax rates to maintain current pension promises would exceed 70%. These pensions will not be paid. The only question is how governments will default, through inflation, direct cuts, or sovereign debt crisis.
Japan provides the template for demographic collapse. Government debt approaching 300% of GDP. Economic growth flatlined for 3 decades. Rural regions emptying while cities fill with elderly. The term Japanification will become as common as inflation in economic discussions. Europe is already following Japan's path. China, despite authoritarian power, cannot command reproduction. The United States merely delays its reckoning through immigration. The geopolitical implications read like science fiction, but are mathematical certainties. Europe cannot project power when nursing homes outnumber military recruits. China's workforce will shrink by 400 million people, more than the entire population of the United States. India inherits a multipolar world not through conquest, but through demographic default. The nation enters its demographic dividend, maximum workers, minimum dependence, just as China begins its collapse. Africa becomes humanity's last growth engine around 2050, when falling fertility finally creates a massive working-age population. Nigeria alone will have more workers than all of Europe combined. The institutional blindness extends beyond the UN. Pension funds still project 7% annual returns based on economic growth assumptions from the 1990s. Governments still promise benefits that require population pyramids that no longer exist. Universities still train students for careers in systems that won't survive their working lives. The Barcelona neighborhood of Gracia illustrates the velocity of collapse. 3 schools served its children in 2010. The first closed in 2018. The second in 2023. Parents at the last school no longer organize fundraisers. They organize campaigns to delay closure by 1 more year. The numbers compound relentlessly. Tomorrow, 200,000 fewer babies will be born than the UN projects. Next week, 1.4 million fewer. By year's end, humanity will be short 73 million future workers, taxpayers, innovators. These are not abstractions. They are missing teachers, doctors, engineers, entrepreneurs. The infrastructure built expecting them will rot unused. The pensions expecting their taxes will default. Every government running deficit spending assumes future growth will reduce debt to GDP ratios. But GDP growth requires population growth, or massive productivity gains. Population growth has ended in the developed world and is ending in the developing world. Productivity growth has stagnated globally since 2008. The debts accumulating today will never be repaid through growth. They will be defaulted, inflated away, or they will destroy the governments that carry them. The feedback loops accelerate the collapse. Fewer children mean fewer future parents. Smaller working-age populations mean higher tax burdens on remaining workers, making children even less affordable. Countries with generous pension systems see the steepest fertility declines. Young people know they're paying for benefits they'll never receive. Each intervention fails because it addresses symptoms, not causes. Singapore's baby bonuses failed. Hungary's tax incentives failed. France's subsidized childcare slowed but didn't stop decline. The causes run deeper than economics. Urbanization, education, female workforce participation, cultural individualism, environmental anxiety, and economic uncertainty all suppress fertility. No nation has reversed these trends. No nation shows signs of reversing them. In 2000, they projected South Korea's fertility would stabilize at 1.4. It fell to 0.7. In 2010, they projected China would maintain 1.8. It's now 1.1 and falling. Each failed projection leads not to methodology reform, but to pushing the recovery date forward. We are not watching demographic transition. For 300,000 years, human societies grew or maintained population. In one generation, that pattern reversed globally. The UN treats this as a temporary deviation. The evidence screams it's permanent. The compound effects will reshape everything. Real estate markets built on growth will collapse. Educational systems designed for expanding enrollment will hollow out from elementary schools upward. Healthcare systems will face infinite demand from elderly populations and finite resources from shrinking workforces. Military recruitment will become impossible. Innovation will slow as young minds become scarce. Debt-based economic systems require growth to function. Without population growth, debt becomes mathematically unsustainable. The global financial system is leveraged assuming a future that won't exist. When markets realize this, not if, when, the correction will hit hard. The question is not whether demographic collapse arrives, but whether societies acknowledge it in time to adapt. Current policies assume the UN is right, that fertility will magically recover, that immigration will fill gaps, that technology will save us. These assumptions are fatal. They prevent the radical restructuring required for shrinking societies to function. Successful adaptation requires acknowledging what's coming. Currencies backed by shrinking economies will fail. Pay-as-you-go pensions will default. Real estate will secularly decline. Economic growth will end. Political systems premised on distributing growth will collapse. The nations that admit this first will suffer least. The nations that deny it longest will cease to exist as functioning states. The numbers are not projections. They are destiny. 30% overestimation in Colombia. 12% phantom babies in China. Fertility at 0.7 in South Korea. These are coordinates for a destination we're approaching at acceleration. Peak humanity in 2055. The difference is not 30 years of time. It's the difference between controlled descent and catastrophic impact. Tomorrow's missing babies become next decade's missing workers, next generation's missing tax base, next century's missing civilization. They are not missing. They were never born.